You may well have been expecting Mr. Oliver Cummings to be delivering this discussion on Capitalise Recovery today, but sadly he's been called away on a medical emergency this morning, and I will do my very best to get across the Capitalise Recovery product. Hopefully, I will do Ollie justice, in terms of delivering his slides with a smile, and I ask you for your forgiveness if I'm not quite as slick as I should be in that context. So I think I very much try to kick off these webinars, whether it's recovery, LMBB, or funding, CBELs, whatever it might be, on time. So I think with that in mind, we'll kick off now. I think we've got 30 minutes together, so I will make sure that with the best of my ability, given it's a new presentation to me, to deliver it within the allotted time. If you've got any questions, shoot them through. Let's try and make it interactive if we can, and I will do my best to answer them. So launching in, for those of you that don't know me, I recognise some of the names on the who have signed up today, but my name is Paul Surtees and I'm co-founder and CEO of Capitalise.com. We've recently launched this new product into Capitalise, which we call Capitalise Recovery. It's a service that is designed to enable you to help your clients recover bad debts. But crucially, it's not automated emailing. It isn't in the credit control position. It's really at that point where the client is going to write off the bad debts. So rather than write it off, recover it. And I'm going to kind of talk you through the mechanisms, how it's fully funded from a litigation process all the way through to the high courts, and how you can help deliver this into your practice and for the benefit of your clients. So just kind of by way of background and some of the thinkings here, Capitalise was launched in 2016. On one side, on the right hand side, we have over 100 institutional lenders, and on the left hand side we have the best part of 2,000 accounting firms and hundreds of thousands of SMEs within those portfolios. And we've helped thousands of businesses, over 260 odd million of funding to date. We've helped businesses grow, we've helped purchase assets, we've funded acquisitions, helped businesses through seasonality, probably more topically through COVID, through CBELs, and similar, we've helped them get through, the challenges of the pandemic. And we are one of the largest introducers to tier ones, the fintechs and the independents in this space for CBELs. But one of the key pieces that may well be challenging these businesses at the moment is late payments and commercial disputes. And it is those 2 points that we are really talking about today when we think about Capitalise Recovery. So why is recovery needed, and why are businesses doing a bad job of it, I guess, at this point in time? So, worryingly, 70% of all SMEs have at least one commercial dispute in a 3-year period. So already a relatively high number. But what you might feel more acutely is the fact that 96% of all SMEs will have experience of bad debts, late payments, and maybe even progression of those late payments into writing off those debts. And you may feel that at the end of the year when you're filing it, you might filing their accounts, you might feel it at the point where they come and ask you, because there's a significant bad debt that is impacting them. But the reality is that 89% of these businesses, so nearly all of the businesses that are experiencing these, will not instruct a lawyer when faced with a dispute or an invoice that is meaningfully damaging to them that they should pursue but can't. And the reason is that there's a huge dissatisfaction with the traditional litigation process. There's high court and legal costs, whip along the way. There's obviously the costs, whether or not you're successful or not, i.e. whether you are loss based. And for the SMEs who are being represented by us, by you, ultimately it's heavily defendant biased. And so if, as is much of the UK industry, SMEs supplying to bigger businesses, in that context, it always feels a little bit like David and Goliath. And so if you're I'm not going to name any large particular business that may have hit the headlines. Let's say Carillion, because they're no longer around. If you are challenging your supply chain through late payments and the like, most businesses feel that they can't go on and take on a business of Carillion's stature, and so they will simply revert to writing off good debt by not pursuing what is ultimately a viable claim. This is a chart that illustrates, I guess, the increased challenge that businesses are currently experiencing. It is provided insights on the percentage of businesses that are actually being paid late on their invoices. So typically it's around 28-29% of invoices are actually being paid beyond the date that they should be paid. And the impact of COVID, relatively well publicized, the likes of the Small Business Commissioner, have been advocating and have been getting victories from, a whole bunch of larger suppliers to pay up front. But we are definitely experiencing a significant increase in the time to pay on invoices as a result of COVID. And so the concept of Capitalise Recovery is going to become more vital to SMEs as the government start to pull back some of their measures in support. Of course, we have furloughs starting to wind back and wind down. We've got the impact of CBILS and whether or not those loans and bounce backs are going to get perpetuated. There's last week CBILS was extended not for application but for the approval date. So provisionally, or initially, that was up to the point of the 30th of September. Now you can apply into the 30th of September, but get an approval up to the 30th of November. And so as some of these tools start to wind down and pull back, retrench from the SME space, the impact of these late payments will potentially continue to be felt acutely by the SME space. So what are you currently doing with your clients in the context of helping them chase late payments? You may well be you may have credit control people within your business. You may well be providing those services to your SMEs. You may well be sending out manual emails to chase up bad debts, whether it's 31 days, whether it's 61, whether it's 91, whether it's 121, whatever those days are, you may well be chasing those. You may be using automated tools like Chaser, or perhaps thirdly, to go through and use the automated email processes and systems to be able to chase those and set up templates and programs within those to do that. If they're still not existing, you may even have templates to threaten court proceedings. You may also engage in commercial discussions with suppliers to try and triage the problem for your SME clients. You may have providers who sit in the traditional debt collection space, but all of those will result in a face-off. It will end up in what we call a dead end. And so that is ultimately that point where you will write off the debt because there isn't the capacity to go over that barrier, over that hurdle, to get yourself into a position where you can recover the debt. So all of those components, the credit control, the manual emails, the chasing, even engaging a debt collection point, you might send the debt collector, the third-party debt collector might send out 3 rather toasty emails with kind of evolvingly aggressive language to try and get that debt back. But ultimately, it will stop because beyond that, you need to litigate, and litigate requires you to fund that process. So what can you do? Capitalise Recovery enables you to remove the barrier. It enables you to have the confidence that this is a fully funded process all the way through, not just the court process, but all the way into the High Court. The traditional litigation process takes 18 months plus. There is no whip to pay for, there's no upfront costs. If on a case you lose, it doesn't have the outcome that we would like, there is no cost to pay, there's no financial risk. And from a client input perspective, beyond the contracts and the invoices, actually the process is relatively low touch. And so, as a solution, it, in our mind, it becomes a natural next step for all of those elements on the left-hand side of the screen for you to be able to progress through into that. So how do we deliver this? We have partnered up with a firm called Escalate. They are an award-winning legal service. They are a regulated firm by the SRA. They've won, as I said, from an award perspective, notable awards. I think they're one of the only businesses that have actually been and have been awarded both by the legal profession and the accounting profession as a solution in this place. They are no win, no fee. So as I said, there's no expenses going into this. It is only on an outcome, and it is insured by a AA insurer that enables them to take on the largest possible cases. So the way in which this ultimately works and how the insurance works is that they will look at a case, and I'll take you through the process in a second. They will look at a case, they will assess its merit, and depending on the merit of that case, they will either take it forward or they will provide you with a rationale as to why they can't, why they think it is not a case that could be pursued through the courts with a successful outcome. It sounds like a subtle point, but that engagement piece there is what enables them to take the insurance. And that insurance is what enables this to be a fully funded case all the way through to the High Court. And that is what gives you the teeth to help support and nurture your businesses and the SMEs that are so valuable to you, but also, for the UK economy. So how does it work? I think for those that are subscribed already to Capitalise and familiar with our platform, you'll recognise, the sort of the tool base that we have here, the dashboard, the funding entry point and the navigation, Capitalise Monitor, and we've literally just slipped in a new navigation component that is recovery. And from within recovery, you can launch two different products. One is debt recovery, simply chasing, invoices that are greater £1,000, or entering into a dispute resolution. And so I'll come to the type of debts and cases that you can recover shortly. But ultimately, if you have a dispute and it has a pound value associated with it, there is two potential channels that you can go through here, and you can coordinate that through Capitalise Recovery on the platform. There is, of course, a whole bunch of process that sits in here. We've tried to simplify it as much as possible for you guys. Whether they're, from the collection piece and the exhaustion of that collection into a simple referral that comes from you guys, into an engagement process that is required because we're working with a legal firm, and so the engagement has to be between the SME and the SRA regulated firm that is Escalate. That will then enter into a negotiation process. If the negotiation is unsuccessful, it will ultimately go to litigation, and then there will be an outcome at court. It will either be won or it will be lost. To add a little bit more meat to the bones, the collection process sitting here, as we discussed at the beginning, that is just the credit control. It is the evolution into the debt recovery templates that you might have, or even actioning third-party debt collectors who would work on a no-win, no-fee basis as well. If that has been exhausted and you're getting to the point where you are going to write off that debt, then this is where you can help facilitate and complete a referral. A few basic fields: name of the company, name of the director, email, and so on, enables us to be able to accept that referral through. We will then, as part of that process, send through the referral agreement to the SME. They will update a few more fields, things like contract, invoice, and a little bit of rhetoric around what the backstory is, which will form the basis for the Escalate review. Escalate will then go on and undertake that review and go through the engagement process. This point here is the critical part. So if there isn't any merit in the case, Escalate will come back and they will provide reason for the rejected case. And to some extent, I think that should, whilst uncomfortable and potentially as a solution, it will give the business closure, because it is giving legal representation as to why this won't be successful. So this won't be successful because the case is too old, because it's already been pursued in a court, and so on. And so some of those components we can go through. At the point where it's been accepted and Escalate are going to take this on, then there's an engagement pack that will go out. It will go out via DocuSign that will facilitate the acceptance of this, and at which point Escalate will pick it up and start negotiating with the supplier or the defendant. They essentially have two routes. There is negotiation and court. And obviously, negotiation is the best outcome, because if they can progress this into a position where the defendant settles, 100 pence in the pound, 80 pence in the pound, and we can do that in 1 week, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, obviously that's a good outcome for the business. If it has to go to court, then it will take the time that the normal court process takes. From an outcome perspective, at that point, because of this high propensity and the requirement for success to be ensured, which gives us the teeth in this process, there is a high propensity for these cases to go on and be successful. If the case is successful, then it is at that point where the economics of the process are paid and split. And so ultimately, if £100 is recovered, 70%, £70 of that recovery will go to the business. 30% will then get split between yourself and Escalate. 27% of that will go to Escalate for undertaking, within the SRA framework, this process, and the 3% will go to your firm on behalf of for the referral. To try and kind of bring that out a little bit, the workflows for you at this point is the transition from this point here, this kind of identification that a business has been unsuccessful in collection and that you are simply referring on. Beyond that, you will be updated and kept up to speed within the platform. That will tell you the status of the case and so on. But beyond that, there isn't really a requirement for you to be able to do any further work. So if I can just give you a couple of case studies, it won't take long. So if and I'm going to take those case studies down both routes. So one is a debt recovery, one is a dispute resolution. So our chap on the left here is a website developer, and he had a claim against a large corporate. He was providing services for SEO, and he would providing services for SEO, search engine optimization. And for those of you that know SEO, it's an art rather than a science. It takes time to develop over time. It's a kind of slow-moving tanker, but when it gets going, that's when the inquiry comes in. The client refused to pay because there were no short-term gains, which is absolutely against the very nature of SEO. And so the client engaged with Escalate. Initially, the multinational pushback. Escalate drafted court papers and provided one final chance for the corporate to pay. So rather than take it straight to court, they demonstrated that litigation was in process and was about to be submitted, at which point, within 2 or 3 days, full payment was paid. And at that point, the case has been successful. It's gone through a negotiation process, and ultimately, the negotiation resulted in money paid back. On the right-hand side, we have a dispute that's basically been developed. It was a building supplier contract, and a flooring company purchased product from a large supplier of cement. Over a relatively short period of time, it turned out that the product was defective, resulting in the end client, for which the builder had installed the flooring, the flooring to fail. And the building company ultimately resulted in claims looking to recover the value of that floor installation. But this is a case of David versus Goliath, in the sense that the claimant simply didn't have the resources to pursue a claim against the large multinational. And at that point, Escalate was engaged by an accountant. The multinational was served some insights that this was a no win, no fee process, and were delivered court proceedings. The dynamic changed. Negotiations started, but the negotiations weren't effective. So it went to court, and the case was settled in full through court, and again, a successful outcome. In both instances, if there hadn't been a successful outcome, then there'd have been no fees to pay. So in the instance of the dispute resolution with our building company here, it would have gone all the way through to the court, because it was for a relatively large sum of money. It was an insured process, and therefore no cost to pay on a losing case. But in both instances, a positive outcome. So a couple of questions. Stephen, I'll come to yours in a second. Kirsty, will the platform send emails to us too, or do we need to log in to check progress? Yeah, so throughout the process, you'll be communicated with, in terms of the status, whether or not they've been engaged, whether there's merit in the case, how it's evolving, and so on. So that will be picked up and managed, and ultimately managed by the platform and your partnership manager. So there's obviously that point of connection. So Stephen, to answer your question, what debts can be recovered? So any invoice that is greater than £1, any invoice or contract that is greater than £1,000, it needs to be at the point where traditional collection methods have been exhausted. So we have been through that collection process. We have sent the automated reminders, and we have sent the slightly sterner emails that have been on a manual basis, because all of that is evidence. All of that is a part of the process that we can then use to go through to a successful outcome. It's obviously important, from a success perspective, that the contracted party has the ability to pay. So with the best will in the world, if the contracted party is insolvent, the assets are protected, etc., then this is a protracted outcome. So we obviously need to be pragmatic that there is a process that we can pursue here. And then I think finally, it is important to recognise that there's an important component that Chaser plays, for instance, in the automated emailing, but that is a part of credit control, and that is a part of trying to get the funds in at the appropriate time. This has got teeth to it, and I think you probably need to be able to recognise that, whether it's debt recovery or dispute resolution, at the point where you're starting to up the ante and there's some context of court proceedings, it's unlikely that the SME is going to be working with that contracted party on the other side of that, because this is by design got teeth so that we can recover it before it gets written off. And so I think those four key components are crucial. So hopefully, Stephen, I've answered your question. How do we identify a client that might need recovery? So I think a key way, you might use Xavier to do this. You might use Capitalise Monitor to do this. Any company that's got individual debtors over 90 days, any company that has lost a client and during that process hasn't been paid, companies where commercial discussions have resulted in a conflict, in a dispute that has a monetary impact. Any company with a current bad debt provision, so where you are basically writing into the accounts provisions for bad debt on an ongoing basis. Also, the David and Goliath scenario. So there is definitely merit in a case, but they just haven't got the economics to be able to do it, and obviously that's where the fully funded insured product comes through to level the playing ground. And I think one of the surprising things for us, and what we see a reasonable amount of, is any company that has written off debt in the last 3 years can be reviewed and go back through this process. So long as it fills the other components more than £1,000, that that the collection process had gone to its, its final point, then anything within those last 3 years can actually be pursued and can actually be reopened despite the accounts being closed. I think, how can we help you, at Capitalise? Well, I think for those of you that have subscribed, you'll be familiar with the, the concept of portfolio reviews. Capitalise Monitor, with accounts in cloud accounting being uploaded into that, will identify any businesses that have got debtors greater than 90 days. Within your portfolio reviews, those questions, can be covered to the relationship with your partnership manager. Eloise will smile in a minute, but facilitation from marketing and from our side to help you get the relevant assets, whether it's brochures, one pages, whether it's support to run client webinars, write newsletters and the like, to be able to get this message out. For some firms, because this is an engaged process, you can think about this in two ways. You can be reactive in the sense that somebody has approached you and said, I've got a bad debt, I've got a dispute, and you can go through the process and get engagement. Or we can actually help facilitate out a mass engagement, and you could offer it as a benefit of your firm, that you have 12-month rolling debt recovery, dispute resolution, fully funded to the High Court, as a benefit of being one of your clients. So it's completely free, because ultimately it is only paid for on the other side. I think that wraps it up. I think I'm relatively on time, close. I'm just looking at my watch. I think we've got 3 or 4 minutes left. If you've got any questions, by all means, shoot them through. I think I've got one question I'm going to ask myself, just in case anybody else comes through at this point. I think why, I guess, as co-founder of the business, why did I think this was important to bring this in? I think that Capitalise's goal currently is to facilitate getting money into balance sheets, or protecting it, monitoring it, tracking it, and ultimately providing a safe haven for capital. So whether it is getting funding, through CBILS at a vital point in time, whether it is giving teeth to your clients to go and recover bad debts or disputes, we are looking at ways where we can bring product in, where we can get pounds into the balance sheet for this crucial time. And with Kirsty on the webinar, obviously we are also driving out, we're leaving no business behind, this this concept of helping protect businesses through cash flows and and delivery of these solutions through. So in the absence of any further questions, I think hopefully I did OC proud in delivering this, the first time I've delivered it. Thank you all for joining. I'm grateful for your time this morning.